Welcome to Mysterious Goings On. We're going to get right to the show after these messages. Would you go on a road trip with death? You'll notice the dramatic pause there for tension. But would you go on a road trip with death? Well, I don't know, but I do know that we have someone with us today who has written about that very thing, among other things. And he is Dario Cannizaro. Dario is an Italian-born writer, director, and all-around storyteller. He lives in Cork, Ireland, where he is currently working on different creative projects. Dario, I just think we could talk about so many things. Just the fact that you're an Italian living in Cork and the home of Jameson, by the way, I believe. So
it is. Hi, Alex.
Well, hi and welcome. Yes, and welcome, and it's good to have you. My next door neighbor immigrated from Cork about 20 years ago, and he's one of my dearest friends. That's how I know a lot about the Jameson.
Have you been there? Have you visited the Jameson factory?
He has, but being a Cork native, it's the pride of Cork in many ways, and he's still got family there. He goes back about every 3 or 4 months. But yeah, my good friend Tony, he's a Irish native, and so I've heard many stories of Cork. I have to ask before we get deeper into the other, how, why Cork?
Yeah, that's a good one. So first off, I've been in Cork for 10 years now, and I've been to the Jameson distillery for the first time this month. Which is crazy, but I had my in-laws visiting and we wanted to do something different and we went there. And I think I'm going to go again because I love whiskey and this place is amazing. But anyway, so 10 years ago, I had a job in Italy and I was in sales. It was sales for a financial company, good salary, good benefits, the most boring thing ever. So, I'm a creative. So I was, at that conundrum where you earn good money and you have a stable job, but you're not happy, you're not having fun. Right. And it was at the same time, my wife, which at the time was my girlfriend, she was finishing her college degree. And so we were at that crossroad where you can actually choose anything. So I was like, you know what, I don't care. I've never worked abroad. I've been in Italy all my life. I want to try something different. So actually our first destination would have been San Francisco, California, because, I'm a bit of a, to put it mildly, hippie. Or a modern hippie, whatever you want to say. So I was always attracted by that city. It's very hard to emigrate into another continent for lots of reasons, legally, and family is far, so you don't want to do that. So we settled on, okay, let's go anywhere in Europe. And I started sending my CV out, and my wife didn't yet because she was, I'm just out of college, so I'll follow you wherever you will go, and then we'll go somewhere. So I was lucky enough to get, a couple of job offers around Europe, specifically France, and I actually got another one in Ireland, in Dublin, and then I got one in Cork from Apple. You know the company, I bet.
I've heard a few things about them.
Yeah, they do phones and stuff. Yeah, and I was a big fan already back in the days. So even I've never been to Cork, and I only had my interview via Skype at the time. I actually got offered a job there, and it was among all of them. It was the one that was paying less, and it was the one in the only city I've never seen in my life. But it was my wife. She said, yeah, but you like the company a lot, don't you? I'm like, yeah, I do. Well, let's go there. Worst case scenario, we change. My wife, she's very important in this kind of, she's very pivotal for me. Sometimes I'm at a crossroad that I don't know where to go, and she doesn't even choose for me, but she, just slaps me a little bit. And then I regain my bearings. I'm like, oh yeah, you're right, I should do this. So eventually we landed in Cork, and we love it. I don't think, crazy thing, I don't think I'll ever move. I actually got the chance to go to San Francisco after a while with my job and everything, and I said no, because I was happy here. So yeah, that's how I ended up in Cork.
Well, in San Francisco, my gosh, it's so expensive too. Oh my gosh.
Beautiful but expensive, yeah.
Beautiful but expensive, yeah. I've been there once, and same thing. I'll be going to Cork down the road, and it's...
Beers are on me if you drink beer. or
Oh my!
whiskey.
I was just getting ready to invite myself to see you. What I was going to say, it's not that big. If I'm there in town, I mean, I can't. You can't act like you don't know me on the street. So there you go.
Impossible.
But yeah, beer's on you. I'm there. No, well, Dario, I'm just fascinated by that because I really do believe that where we write often informs so much of what we write. And if you don't mind, I'd love to just leap into your writing here. I Dead Men Naked, a novel. Let's go there for a minute. Not to actual naked dead men, but let's go to the book. So, was it written in Ireland or was it written in Italy?
It was written in Ireland, and yeah, actually, the title can be misleading. It's not a necrophilia erotica, not at all. It's from a poem by Dylan Thomas. It's a verse from a poem, which is, and that shall have no dominion. And Dead Man Naked, it's a metaphorical nakedness, right? When you are in front of the end of times. Right. So I loved that poem, and I loved that quote, from the poem. So I was like, yeah, that's a great title, but it's a great title because I know the book. And if you don't know the book, and I have a very good friend of mine, this is an anecdote I always share. She bought the book on Amazon on the day of the release, and she sent me a screenshot of her phone. And Amazon sends you those alerts when you buy So she was like, your package containing Dead Man Naked has been shipped. Yeah. But I was in Cork, and I remember I had written other longer stories. I had written a novelette in Italian and many short stories. And I wrote some short stories in English, and I was, okay, I think it's time. I had this idea that I wanted to explore the concept of my mortality, because it's something I struggle with, because I'm like a pendulum. I oscillate between, I'm not sure God is there, and then I'm like, oh yeah, God is there. And it's always like this, right? So I wanted to explore this kind of concepts and the death and everything. And I remember staring at the blank page, like every writer, and I was like, okay, how do I start this? Because I didn't have a specific idea. The only idea I had is we have to meet death eventually, right?
Right.
And then I was like, what if I met her or him or whatever now? What would happen? What would I do? And that was the first idea. And then it started out like this, and it veered very soon into magical realism or urban fantasy, whichever you want to say. Because I was like, okay, maybe if we like we do with everything, if we anthropomorphize death, right? If we give it a human resemblance or human characteristics, maybe it's going to be easier to deal with it, talk with it. And that was the beginning of the story. Or if you want, the core idea, the core concept. And then what happened there is that I started writing, and it came out very easily, I have to say, which I was surprised. I had to stick to a routine, like waking up every morning at 5 or things like that, because I think it helps me. But the story is basically this everyday guy who is in love with poetry. He studied poetry, and he actually lives in San Francisco. So San Francisco comes back somehow. And he's out with his friend, and they're on a night out, drinking and having fun. And they decide to check out the weird guy that lives in the attic in their building. And it turns out it's death itself. And this creates weird things, of course. First of all, and spoiler alert, his best friend there dies on the spot. But it happens in the first chapter of the book, so I'm not giving out anything. And from there, Louis, which is the name of the main character, struggles to understand what's happening. So he doesn't know, did I see something? Did I actually see death? Did I see something else? What was happening there? And also he has to struggle with the loss of his best friend. So this is the feeling there. But because I don't want to write heavy stuff, if you want, I wanted to make it more lighthearted. That actually shows up. And he befriends Louis. And for reasons that I'm not going to explain, they will have to go on a road trip together to do stuff and to find the things that will make Lou's life better, if you want. And so it starts the weirdest road trip ever, with this normal dude who is in love with poetry and death itself.
Oh my gosh, I love this. This is right up my alley. I love this. And so, as we rage against the dying of the light, as we all And I'm with you. The pendulum. I'm the same. And as I get older, I struggle with that quite a bit. But I'd love to read this. This sounds like not only interesting on the woo-woo level, but more. Listeners, you can't see Dario. I can. We have a little rapport here. He's got this twinkle in his eye. I can just imagine this is going to be a hell of a trip. Um, so let me ask you a little bit about you as a writer. I
Mhm.
see on your website, which is really great, and folks, there'll be a link in the show notes. Don't worry. That you also have I think it's an old VW van, and you got a surfboard and all that. Are you unusual on the out there in Ireland with your surfboard and your van?
So surfboards, there's not many surfers in Ireland, but there's enough. So I don't want to say we know each other, but we kind of know each other because there's not many. Now with the pandemic in the past year and a half, there's a lot of people that took up surfing, so the lineup is a bit crowded. But I'm sure it's gonna dwindle down in winter time when the water is incredibly cold and only the
Oh,
brave will face it. But yeah, with the camper van, yeah, I have this VW bus, 1973 VW bus that me and my wife bought in 2018, and we're restoring slowly. Even though this year I think we got to a point where we're actually enjoying it more than restoring it, which is great. But yeah, every time you go around, I think it's like I feel like it's a duty, right?
mm,
Because people wave at you when you go around with this kind of old school vintage cars, and especially the VW van. It has an iconic look somehow, and you would link it to the old hippies, Vjor, and that's for sure. And I said I am a hippie somehow, so I'm leaving it in a way. But the funny thing is that even kids, and this is something that it's crazy, kids, they don't have the cultural reference that we do, right? If you look at one of those vans, you either think of Scooby-Doo or you think of hippies.
right.
But for young kids, they don't know, they don't have this kind of reference, and yet they wave, they smile, they want to take pictures. So every time I'm driving, I also have to wait back and smile because I feel like, okay, I have to be the polite guy with the van, right? I don't want to be the rude one because it's an experience somehow.
Right.
So yeah, we go around, and actually we slept on the beach yesterday and woke up this morning and came back,
Oh,
which is nice. It's always beautiful.
you've got a really rough life then, don't you? Yeah.
Horrible, horrible.
Well, just stiff upper lip now, struggle through. Uh, that's the reason it goes back to that question I had before we started talking more in depth about the book, is though the sense of place and how it informs your writing. So if you wrote the book and it's a big road trip book, you could drive from coast to coast in Ireland in a relatively short amount of time.
Yeah,
So I'm curious, how did all that work for you? How did that inspire you, or not?
yeah, that's a great question. So I love road trips in general. I love driving for pleasure or for if I have to drive for work, I'll get bored very soon. But if I have to jump in a car with a friend because we have to go 400 kilometers away to grab whatever, come in. Because I think when you're in a road trip, there is a dynamic between the two or three or four or whatever amount of people. You start talking in a different way. Because if you think about it, the car is a moving thing. So you are never in the same place at the same time. So you're kind of removed, if you want, from the space continuum, if you allow me to be a bit science fiction-y.
Yeah.
And I think it creates a little bubble. And my best conversations ever have always happened on a road trip. Even the small one, even to go for groceries with my father. And my father he died in 2015 when I was writing the book as well. So it played a part. But we didn't have this great relationship. It wasn't bad, but it was very old school, right? We didn't talk much. But I remember all the time when we were in the car, we would talk more than usual. We would touch deeper topics. And I think that stuck with me somehow. It started there when I was a kid, and I feel it with my friends as well. If I go around, when you're in a car, you cannot get distracted, right? And this helps. I think it helps. And that was a big part of why the road trip. But then, and in the year before that, or a couple of years before that, I started traveling for work, and I came to the US more than often, and for work, but I also always had time to rent a car and drive around for a bit.
Very good.
And you can say whatever. Now, I haven't been to Canada, and I haven't been driving long distances in Asia, maybe, but I think that United States of America are the perfect scenario for a road trip. You have this huge, incredible big roads, long distances, ahead of you. And I liked it. The first road trip I've done, it was with a friend, and we went from San Francisco. We drove down to halfway through the Big Sur, and then we cut down and we went to Vegas. And there is Vegas in the book, because I remember vividly going to Vegas, and it's gonna sound bad, hating it in a way. I was like, everything is fake, everything is weird, it's not a real city. And then I was like, how do people live here? I mean, what do the people that actually live here, right? Not the tourists. What is their life? So, I started wondering, and we ended up in just something. I've never been to a strip club, but once in my life in Vegas. But with my friend, we actually went on Yelp or whatever, I don't remember, to pick the worst strip club in Vegas.
No.
Because, we said, okay, we have to go where people that live here might go because it's cheap and it's, off the beaten road and things like that. So we ended up in this place, and it was a trip in itself. But I remember nothing happened. No, it's a strip club. They didn't even serve alcohol, and it was in the back of a video store, which was so weird.
Oh, wow.
And and I remember talking to some of the girls, because I was genuinely curious about their life. I was like, what brings you here? Why are you doing this? And so all these things, somehow got connected naturally. That of my father, road trips, the deep conversations, having to meet that, and they all got intertwined. And my love for poetry, right? Because I do love poetry myself. So I kind of gave this to the main character of the book. And it's a book that you can read on different levels. I think this is one thing that I really wanted to do. It didn't happen by chance. It was deliberate choice, where you can read the book and just enjoy the story. And it's funny, it has fun moments, it has good one-liners. So you can just read it and say, oh, that was a nice book. But if you get some of the references or the subcontext, then you can go to another level. And that was the hardest part for me, because it's very hard to go deep, but allow people to swim in the shallow water if they want to. It was very hard.
Wow, I've never heard it described quite that way, but it's interesting. I as a writer myself, that's the tightrope I try to walk as well. You don't want to be pedantic, you don't want to be heavy-handed, but you want to have something there for both types of readers, I think. There's the reader who just hears road trip, let's go, and then there's the other one who's like, road trip, it's you're putting it to another Russian.
Yes, exactly.
But America, see, that's why I wanted to ask the question, because, and this is, I think, one thing that I think you hit it on the head. There's one very positive aspect of the American the American flavor, whatever you want to call it, is that wide open spaces. And lots of highways and lots of byways and off roads and things like that. So it's interesting. Since I first read Travels with Charlie by Steinbeck back when I was a very young man, the idea, right? Just the very idea. And then William Lee's Teat Moon, and then there's all these different road books. And that's one reason why I was very attracted to what you're doing when we booked you on the show, was to look at this, because I love a good road trip. I love it. Even the little brief parts of one of my favorite films, Local Hero, where the American is driving to the very tiny Scottish village, and they can't even keep going because the fog is so deep. They just have to pull over. And anyway, I don't mean to go on. Well, Dario, I like this, but I wanted to ask. From there, is this where you found an even tougher challenge? Is this where you went to short stories when you wrote this? Did you think, oh, I can't do another novel, or do I have this backwards?
So, no, well, it happened somehow at the same time, because I was writing short stories back in Italy. And then I stopped for a while because I wanted to, I think that one of the challenges was to actually write in English. I always loved the English language. Italians would think, and this is a common sentiment that I've seen when I was back in Italy, that they would say that, oh, but the English language, it's not so nuanced as the Italian. It's actually not true. Honestly,
Really?
I speak both. Yeah. I'm like, okay, you don't know English language. So if you only heard English language by your English teacher or something like that, then no, you're missing a lot of things. And I think that one thing I learned is that every language will have different levels and different meanings for different words. So much so that when I speak with my wife, we would switch between, it's a melting pot of Italian and English, right? Because sometimes we want to say something that it's only that gives that exact flavor and meaning, and it's all in English, and some other time it's all in Italian, and yada yada yada. There is a word, and I learned that back when I was a teenager, because there is a word in the Russian language, which is Tosca or Tosca, I don't know how to pronounce it, which is a certain type of melancholy for things that have not happened. It's a yearning, but you don't even know what for.
Ooh,
Beautiful, right?
that's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the language. So I was like, if I want to write in English, it's not a matter of putting the word one after the other. It's understanding the nuances.
Right.
So before writing the novel, I started writing short stories, and having friends that were reading it, native speakers in the English language, that would tell me what do they think, and I would ask them questions like, okay, but here, what do you think about this passage and this other one and this other one? Up to the point where I felt comfortable enough to go, yeah, I can write a full novel, no problem. And I think it's an advantage, I would say now, because the way I looked at the English language, it had to be through an analytical lens, which a native speaker would not. So I had to go through that process, and and the comparison is purely for the logistical side of things, right? I'm a non-native speaker that wrote in another language and everything, but Nabokov, Lolita,
Yeah.
greatest book, one of the greatest book ever written.
Yeah.
It has some passages there that now that I know English, I would say very well, I recognize that are coming from the fact that he was not a native speaker. So I'm not comparing myself to Nabokov, please God, no. Please, but that would be super unfair to myself because he's one of the greatest. But I do see why it can be an advantage, because you might be able to do things that have a different sound and are more, I want to say, original maybe, than if you are used to the language all the time.
You took the question and ran with it because this is where I wanted to go. And I wanted to ask you what I thought was going to be kind of a simplistic, childish question, but I'm going to ask it now because I think you've given me permission. Because you talk about nuance, right? The English language. I Some people call them dad jokes here, which but puns, which some people think are the lowest form of humor. I don't agree with that. But I love double meanings. I love entendre. I love playing with the language. I love saying one thing, but depending on who you are, you're going to read it one way or the other. And that's what I'm speaking about. So is that not evident or not available to you in Italian?
No, there are. We have the same, right? And it's the same. So, but I do see there are different things. Like one thing that might have a double entendre in Italian might not have it in English, and vice versa. So there's always you have to walk the line, and I think language is the key to unlock the culture. Definitely, you cannot really understand the culture if you don't know the language. And this is true for everything, right?
Right.
And for me, I really saw it coming to life, this kind of thing, once I actually was mastering, if you want, English in a way where I was able to comprehend all the shades of the culture. And that came in handy because, in the beginning, I would not understand some of the things, even though they were in plain English. But there is a certain nuance, or shade that unless you know the culture, you won't get it. But if you don't know the language very well, you wouldn't get it anyway. So I think it's great. And that's why I felt, oh, that's beautiful, because now I can unlock a lot of different cultures, but it's terrifying at the same time because I'm very curious, right? And now I know for sure that I will never really understand a French person or a German person or a Japanese person 100%.
Right.
And I don't have that with my English friends. There is a common subtext which is bonded by the language that we all speak, and it helps us understand each other on a deeper level than just saying words and receiving them.
Two things on that, if I may. So that's on American Netflix. It's available. I don't know if you've heard of it. Have you ever heard of Midnight Diner Tokyo Stories? It's about a tiny.
I haven't.
Okay, it's Japanese, and
Cool.
it's subtitled, and your point about not fully understanding the culture because you're not a native speaker is so evident to me. But watching it, hard to describe. But I think it's a hugely popular show in Japan, and it opened a side of Japanese culture to me that I had no clue existed, and just on how normal people speak and think, and there's certain things that go on in Japanese society I had no idea about. I mean, they're very open about porn, for example.
Weird porn.
Yeah, it's very weird. Oh, and they go some of the episodes. I mean, go right into some stuff. But that's not the point. So there's that. So I watched that, and then the other day I watched a Danish film that won the Best International Picture Oscar with Mads Mikkelsen starred in it, and the English title is Another Round. I think it's called Druk, or Drunk or whatever. It's a Druk in their language. But watching that, the subtitles, and that movie is an examination of four friends who believe that, well, maybe if we drink throughout the day and are slightly buzzed throughout the day, we'll be better people, better professionals. And it starts funny and that kind of thing, but then it goes into this thing. But the point being, I get this window into these societies that I think you're kind of talking about, just watching these subtitled films that are kind of covering this. And I realize films and TV shows are not real life, but I still think that they're a mirror that are held up to their culture.
They are.
So I guess to me that what you just said really reinforces the kind of the head scratching thing I was thinking, because I really thought I understood or had a good handle on cultures, and I clearly didn't, just watching their entertainment. So I guess the just to circle around to the real question here, though, is there a aspect of Italian culture that, now that you have extensive travels and have been around the world and you're familiar with Americans, we'll just have you speak for what you've seen in America. Is there a huge misconception about Italy that Americans have?
Well, yes and no. So there is, in the sense where I wish we were all, drinking wine and coffee all day, sitting in a cafe, and that would be amazing. We don't. So there is an incredible aspect around la dolce vita, which is this beautiful way of life, which I'm super happy. I lived in Italy 27 years because, come on, it's a great country. But it's also very tough because you can have this incredible wine and you can have this gorgeous food and yada, yada, yada. But it's also a culture that is very closed on itself, because Italians are very proud. I don't want to say arrogant. They're very proud of their culture for very good reasons. Tiny country, created a lot of incredible stuff. So I understand where it comes from.
Kind of ruled the world for a while.
Kind of did. The known world, yeah. And but that that backfires, and I think if you look at it, it's backfiring for the USA as well, because it's kind of the decline of the Roman Empire in a way, because what's happening there is that you feel so I'm the best that you become blind to yourself. And I think in Italy, what I'm seeing from my friends and family, etc., apart from the few ones that are, if you want to say, I don't want to say enlightened, but that are more critical, because they are maybe struggling through the fringes. Because if you have a house and if you have a job, you probably don't even see the issues at hand, because you're so ingrained into the shouting and stuff that you don't even realize. But the thing there is, it's very hard. And I want to give you some examples, because it's stupidly enough, but pineapple on pizza. For me, yeah, go for it. It's pizza. Yeah. Eat whatever you want. It's pizza, right? I love, weird as it sounds, I actually love American food, because for me, it's the contamination. So I do a meatball marinara sub, which doesn't really exist in Italy. But I do it because I'm like, yeah, that's cool. This is, immigrants that were there in New York City and had to do tomato sauce, but they did it with onions because, they were probably, their mother was Polish or something. And this kind of thing, I love it. But in Italy, if you talk about pineapple on pizza, they're going to look at you weird. Or if you drink a cappuccino after lunch, they're going to look at you with a stinky eye because cappuccino is for breakfast. I think it happens in every culture. It's not just Italy. But I think we are very much focused on the fact, we're the best. We're so good. Yes. Yeah. Which we forgot that, no, guys, we have a lot of great things, but it's better if we look forward so we can actually keep being very good, at least. Then if you sit on your laurels, as they say, and you say, yeah, I'm the best, that's it.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the big misconceptions, because people think Italians are all happy and happy-go-lucky and easygoing, but it's not the reality. There's a lot of hardship there.
Right, or this horrible thought that going back to the old country and all the mafia and all that stuff,
Yeah,
which I think is frankly insulting to Italians. That whole culture,
it
that
is. It
thought,
is. It is.
Uh,
And just for that point, which I didn't want to touch because it can open up a can of worms, but I'm from Naples, right? Originally, Napoli. So the home of Camorra, one of the most famous criminal organizations ever. And it is there. So it is true that it's there, but like it would be in any other big city, right? I'm sure
yeah.
there's mafia in New York City, probably run by Italians or Irish. I can do that. I live in Ireland and I'm Italian, so I can do this joke. Uh, but the thing is, it's not as terrible as it sounds. And one thing that I'm hating right now is that it's being glorified through TV shows.
Yeah.
There's been this huge Gomorrah TV show and the books and everything, and they're, instead of being a j'accuse, against this thing, I can actually see young people being attracted by that kind of thing. Like, I don't think you're having the effect you wanted to have with that TV show and that movie and that book.
Right.
And I don't like it because again, people are profiting on something that is an issue, and I don't really like that.
Yeah, we had an author of one of the definitive books on The Sopranos TV series here last year, and it's a great book. It's a great series. And there was an episode, I recall this, where one of the mafioso goes back to Italy, and he's the typical, and I mean, he gets the stink eye from everybody.
I bet it does.
Which I loved. I love that they showed that, because I was like, good, because I love the show very much, but I saw a lot of Americans who were getting the wrong idea, and I also saw a lot of Americans who were glorifying the anti-hero a little too much.
Yes, I agree. And can I? Okay, Alex, this is a exclusive confession for you.
Ooh, here we go. You were in the mafia, weren't you?
No, I never. That's why I run to Ireland, of all places. Like what's Lilyhammer? Yeah. No, I never watched The Sopranos.
Oh, well,
I know.
It's not everybody's bag, but it's
no, but I never started it, so I'm sure I'm gonna love it, because a couple of friends told me, yeah, you have to watch it, and I'm a big sucker for TV shows and movies, because that's the other topic we might touch,
right?
But yeah.
Yeah, and it's a great segue, because I know I've eaten up so much time about the language. And folks, we're going to have to move past this short stories, but there is a wonderful anthology of Dario's short stories. It's called Of Life, Death, Aliens, and Zombies, which is another reason I wanted to speak with you, because I'm all over that stuff. But I have to ask you, though, if you don't mind,
please,
in the waning moments here. So you're into film now. Tell us about that.
I am. So yeah, so that in the beginning, you read the beautiful introduction for me, thanks, and it says, all around storyteller. Mm-hmm. I've consciously realized very late that I was a storyteller, in the sense where I don't care about the medium. I just want to tell stories. Right. And I knew it, deep inside me, because when I was younger, I was always, I'm going to be a writer, and then I want to make a movie, and then I want to make a comic book, and then I want to write songs, and all these kind of things. And I didn't, for the longest time, I thought I had to choose. I thought I was like, no, you either are a writer, or you write comics, or you write songs. And that might be true in the purest sense, in the sense where maybe you will get, if you're incredibly lucky, you might get to do one thing. Yeah. That you love in your life, and like properly, and it's gonna give you bread on your table or things like that. So maybe it's true in that sense, but that doesn't mean that you cannot do everything else, right? So what happened is that 2018, and it was right after I launched Dead Man Naked, right? And I did everything by myself there, because there is one peculiarity in that book, which is I don't use quotation mark in that particular book. Again, just because I like to be compared to the big ones, so I can come out devastated, like Cormac McCarthy or people like that.
So I mean, come out devastated.
Why not? I don't want to be compared to the to the poor guys. There's no way of leaving. But anyway, but and this is only because I do think that that story needed that kind of format. I haven't had any complaint about the absence of these quotation marks, and I've been very careful. But that was the point. So I did everything by myself. It was a hard book to write, and I had a mental breakdown because I think it was due to everything. I didn't process the death of my father. I didn't process the fact that I was using a lot of energy to write this book, and so on and so forth. So I had a mental breakdown. I actually had a panic attack while I was at work.
Oh my!
And I never had a panic attack in my life. And if you ever had a panic attack, you know that the first time it happens, you think, okay, I'm dying. That's it. Yeah. My heart or whatever. So I thought I was dying. And it happened 3 days in a row. And then the doctor said, yeah, you have to go home and take some time for yourself. So I did. And I started, the first weeks were horrible anyway, because, when you go on this kind of sick leave, and I remember the doctor telling me, if you can go surfing every day, do, because it's a good way to have the heart pumping. And we want that in the sense where you won't feel your anxiety because your heart is pumping for other reasons. While if you're sitting at home, you will feel the chest beating anyway. So it's like, do some sport. So some people might think, oh yeah, he's surfing every day. Huh, what a life, yeah, he's sick. I know some people might think of it, and but it's not true. Like the first 3-4 weeks, I would be sleeping every day and I would be anxious, and it was horrible. I didn't have any bearing on reality. So it was very bad. But after the first 3, 4, 5 weeks, and I started going to a counselor right away, like a psychologist, to figure out, to help me. And I think it's very important because, if your finger hurts, you go to the finger doctor and things like that.
Right.
But if your head hurts, people don't really go to psychologists. Maybe in the US a little bit more. But in the old world here, it's still seen as a stigma somehow. So, and one of my best friends, first thing she said was, "Oh, so now you're the proper writer with the psychologist cliche. You go to therapy and you're going to say my therapist." And I was like, yeah, probably I will. I don't care. But yeah. So the point is, I had more time to write. I was more available to the muse, let's say. Because, when you're a writer yourself, sometimes you are doing other stuff and then you have the inspiration that is coming to you and you cannot act upon it, which is horrible for a creative person. But, that's life. At that time, I had all that I needed. And for just a twist of turn, I met a director and he was looking for a script. And I had a short story that I thought, you know what, this could actually work very well as a short movie. So I made this short story, which was unfinished at the time. So I finished it as a script directly. And I sent it to this guy. And he was like, oh, I really like it, but I don't have the means to make it yet, because he was a young director. I was like, okay. But he's like, but you should try, because I think it's great. So you should send it out and see what happens. So long story short, I met this director in LA through social networks. And he was like, oh, he read that script. And he was like, oh, I love it. I want to make it. It's great. I was like, yeah, whoa, wow, incredible. Someone in LA, Hollywood. Yeah, I was already on the red carpet. And but then we started chatting with this guy. And he acted like a mentor a little bit. And he did tell me that if you want to see your story, like see with your eyes, right, on a screen, exactly the way you've written it, there's no other way. You have to direct it yourself.
Yeah.
Because no one will do it the way you want to. And then I was like, yeah, but I don't know how to do it. He was like, yeah, no one does. It's like, you have to learn. If you're really serious, you will learn. And of course, that's exactly the type of things that I love. I was like, cool, new things to learn. Let's do it. So I remember writing more and more scripts just to hone my skill in that particular way of writing. And then eventually I decided, okay, I want to make this script that I made first. I want to make it. Before doing that, I decided to make a shorter one, like an exercise, if you want. So I wrote that one, and it was just a dialogue, if you want. Dialogue-based, 6 minutes short, between a low-life gang member and his fiancée, and he brings home a gun. And guns are not very common in Europe, thankfully.
Yeah.
So it's a big thing, right? And she's like, what the hell, and they talk about it and the meaning of violence, yada, yada, yada. So I shot this one very small and short in my living room. I shot it there in February 2020. And then in March, I was ready to shoot the bigger short, if you want. But then COVID hit. So I never started that one. The good thing is that the first one that I made, the exercise, ended up to be a little bit better than I expected. So I enrolled a friend to make the score. He's a very good composer. And he made the score for me, and we sent it to a couple of festivals. It got into a couple of small festivals, which was for me a great result for a first try. It's called Trigger Warning. It's not openly available yet, but I'll put it on YouTube, I think, by the end of 2021. Because for me, I don't, it's nothing. I'm very critical with myself, so I don't think Trigger Warning will ever win a festival. If it does, there's something wrong with the festival. But it's a nice one, so I'm gonna release it into the wild like everything with art. But in the beginning, when you send it to festivals, it has to be you cannot be public, right? So I had to keep it private for a while. But the good one is actually, going back to Japan, it ended up in a small indie festival in Tokyo, where it was nominated for Best Writing, and the actress won Best Actress.
Hey.
So it was nice. Yeah, I know, right? Small victories are big enough for me. I was very happy to hear that. But then now that COVID is, fingers crossed, going away, let's say, I will resume with the film making. So I will make The Last Contract, which is the one that I set out to make first, which is a story about an Irish not serial killer, an Irish hitman, which is hired by an old man to do a contract on a guy that is actually dying in a hospital. So it's a weird situation there. And then after that one, I have another one in pipeline, which is about the devil himself. And this is going to be my trilogy of short movies that is going to serve the purpose to actually raise some funds for a proper movie that I want to direct, that I already written. I think the title is going to be Wait for Me, I think. Not sure 100%. But it's about, it's funny because we talked about mafia a bit. It's about two rival families in Ireland. So one is an Irish family, and the other one is a Japanese-Russian family. So it's complete work of fiction, right? There's no such thing as a Japanese-Russian mafia in Ireland. Not that I know of. If I'm dead, you know why. But and basically there are things that happen. But the way that I wrote, and the script is ready, and I will actually, if you want to read it as a super preview, I'm going to send it to you.
Oh, please. Thank you.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. So you can give me notes. But it's very much, I want to say, very Quentin Tarantino or Guy Ritchie or, this kind of crime comedy that I want to do.
Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels is one of my top 10 favorite films.
Beautiful movie.
And of course,
beautiful
Tarantino.
Film.
Yeah. But those are, Dario, you... And I hate to do this because we've gone long here, but I've enjoyed it so much. But please send me that script. But
I will.
I am fascinated. I love your take on things.
Thanks.
I'm really. I love all the. Well, it's just the niche that you're writing about and all that stuff. And I love this stuff. And
cool.
I'm so happy I got a chance to meet you. And I would just like to say there's an open invitation. You come back when the film's closer to ready, or if you got some updates, we'd love to have you back. Do send me that screenplay. But I'm going to give you the last word. I'll ask you a question, and then I'll let you have the last word with that. Where does everybody else go to find out more about you and your work?
Thanks, Alex. So you can find me on social networks, right? So I have a website, which is www.dariowrites.com. And from there, you can go anywhere else. But I'm on Facebook with the same handle. I'm on Twitter with the same handle. And I'm on Instagram with the same handle. However, I'm very old school. So if you write me on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, I'll probably see it in 2 weeks. But if you want to write me, emails are nice. So if you go on my website, you can find a way to contact me there, but I will answer on all the others as well. And of course, at the moment, you can buy my books on Amazon in your country.
Dario Cannizaro, I would go on a road trip with you and Death. I would love to ride shotgun with you guys. I tell you,
that would be cool. Yeah. Well, there are beers in our future, I bet, when you come to Cork. And
Absolutely, absolutely, Dario. Thank you so much.
thanks,
I know
Alex.
we just scratched the surface, and we'll get you back. But again, that's DarioWrites.com. Go to mgopod.com for the show notes. You're not just going to get your usual show notes with one link and adios. You're going to get pictures of this handsome man. You're going to get pictures of his book cover. You're going to get links. And I don't know, if he's got something on YouTube, I'll find it and put it on there. I'm just kidding. He probably's like, no, don't do that yet. But anyway, Dario Cannizaro, thank you for joining us here on
Oh,
Mysterious
thanks, Alex.
Goings
It's
On.
been a pleasure.
Have you lost your belief in finding a really good mystery thriller? Well, trust me, you've got to have faith. Pilot's faith. Kirkus Review says of the book that Greenwood pulls many tricks from his writer's satchel, has a quirkiness and energy, and snappy, snarky dialogue that keeps things moving briskly. A well-handled mystery with the appropriate twist at the end. Midwest Book Review says newcomers to Pilot will find no barriers to quick immersion in his personality and situation, while prior series readers immediately become involved in another conundrum which tests his skills and the ways in which others view him in his world. Surviving a recent attempt on his life, a weary John Pilot returns to Cross Township, where a bizarre string of shootings has paralyzed the tiny college burg. Pilot joins forces with the law to find out why people are being terrorized in his name and stop it. Unfortunately, when he turns to his family for support, he finds only hardened hearts. People are dying, accusing fingers are being pointed his way, and he has nowhere left to turn. Everything John Pilot believes in, family, sanity, and even himself, are shaken to the core in Pilot's faith. Online Book Club says, it's a gripping and fun story that kept me hooked. Greenwood's writing style is dynamic, and the book reads like a movie script. You can get John Pilot Series number 8, Pilot's Faith, exclusively in paperback and ebook on Amazon.com. And remember, in the end, it all comes down to faith. Pilot's Faith. A Caroline Street Press book by J. Alexander Greenwood. Thanks so much for listening to Mysterious Goings On. Don't forget we have a complete archive of all of our interviews, monologues, updates, live readings, dead readings. All of that stuff is available at mgopod.com. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to us so you never miss an episode. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the usual suspects. Please join us there. Again, don't forget, mgopod.com also has links where to find me on social media and how to get in touch in case you want to be a guest here on the show. Well, I think it's time that I move on for this week, but until next time, keep reading.